Okay, so, yeah. This one I kind of prepped earlier by saying that one of these movies had to grow on me, and one of them is one I just really, really didn't like at all.
Correct.
But I was going to give another watch because I just happened to find it for like $1.50 on DVD. That was Martha Marcy May Marlene. I got Winter's Bone mainly for the prestige factor because if it was nominated for picture, I typically try to get it if I can. And I have, I think I only have, like, The Kids Are Alright and Black Swan are the only 2010 picture nominees I don't have now.
That's weird. Those are the ones I actually like.
I'm not a Black Swan fan, which you saw when I did
Yes.
this.
The funny thing is you're looking at this cover. First off, it says Winner Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously,
it's Sundance.
If you don't read that, it says, oh my god, when did it win Best Picture? Anybody know that?
The giveaway, though, is when if it's won the Oscar for Best Picture, there's usually a big-ass Oscar by it right here.
Right. I thought they just didn't care.
Yeah. The King's Speech sends its regards.
Yes.
So yes, this was one of those, this was one of the big Sundance breakout movies, which seems to be... This was kind of really in there in regards to that trend that was starting with, basically, I want to say, was Precious one of the Sundance movies? I don't really remember. I think so. I think I remember the early word. But when Winter's Bone happened, it kind of really started that trend of if the indie movie that breaks out big at Sundance should probably start getting predicted at the Oscars. Because this was going to do really well. Like, a lot of people weren't sure. I was, not to boast or brag or anything, but I was like one of those people saying through the whole year that the movie and Hawks were in. Lawrence and the screenplay were kind of givens, but people thought The Town might take the last picture slot, and Andrew Garfield might take the last supporting actor slot. But I was always quite certain it was going to be this and Hawks, which of course it was. And so, obviously, it's a very intriguing plot. Like, it was very... I think the main factor in the way we felt about it when we first saw it, because I think I saw it like 4 times throughout the season, because I showed it so many people, and it's just generally a time for revisiting, a lot of revisiting. I think the main problem going in for me was that I just really had no idea what it even was going in. Nobody knew who Lawrence was unless they watched the Bill Engvall show. The only thing I knew who John Hawkes was, weirdly enough, because he obviously was around way before this. I think he's in Heartbreak Hotel. He's the dude that like runs the talent show. So he's at least from way back then. The oldest movie I think after that I remember seeing him in is the Clerken from the opening scene from Dusk Till Dawn. And then this was supposed to be like a big awards movie for him, and that's pretty much all I knew. But it's this intriguing plot, actually, where the 17-year-old girl has a dad who's like this druggie who's been in and out of prison, and has a mom that's basically not functioning mentally. She just kind of has to sit around and just kind of not do a whole lot. I think brush hair is the most we see her do in the whole movie. And there's the other 2 kids she has to take care of. And of course, the father has completely disappeared. And if he doesn't show up to his court date, they're going to lose their house. So everybody and their brother is looking for him. And it's basically having to watch this 17-year-old girl be like the ultimate adult in this scenario and take on all these responsibilities that her parents are absent for in one way or another. And it's obviously in this very kind of, for the most part, unique setting. It's one of those very authentic settings where a lot of the people you see were people that are just in that area that they just filmed. It's very, I make this probably, not very nice joke. When there's like a flea market like 15 or 20 minutes away from here, and it's a very, very flea market place, and it kind of became a running joke that I said that the occupants and the vendors at that flea market are basically the cast of Winter's Bone.
I remember that.
And so you know exactly what place I'm talking about.
Just shake thinking about that.
But the thing though is that because of this, all these characters could be stereotypes. And while they are to an extent, they're all also very real characters too. Like some of them are very warm, like the neighbor that's always giving. The neighbor they basically have to rely on to survive through her kindness to just give them things. But then there's some that are just inherently threatening, like Dale Dickey and her whole crew. And then there's ones like Ree who basically have to rise above where they are and kind of, take on duties much sooner than they probably should be. And then there's just off-the-wall crazy people like Teardrop. And as I was saying, this was basically, for the most part, Hawks was getting a lot of attention for this. It's still weird to me that people were thinking Garfield was going to get in over him at the time, because I was always way on that. Hawks was definitely getting him for this. It's weird that it hasn't happened to him since, is the real weird thing. But yes, his performance here is so, I guess, unpredictable would be a good word for it. Because he's like the only other family member that she knows. It's her uncle, her dad's brother. And so, sure enough, it seems like he might be fine because he's family, right? Like, that shouldn't be a problem. And he's John Hawks isn't typically too threatening of a guy. But then there's that moment when he comes out from his bedroom and he's talking things over with him, and the woman's talking, and he tells her to shut up. And then you kind of think, well, that's a little off-putting. But then she's talking again, and he says, I already said shut up once. I already said shut up once using my mouth. And you're like, oh, well, something tells me this guy's not pleasant at all. And then it kind of goes throughout the movie. In that same scene, the unexpected moment when he just grabs her and says, like, no to her face and just, like, holds her there. And you realize that this guy he's basically her only chance at help, but he's also genuinely threatening. Which makes him a very interesting character that Hawks finds all the ins and outs of. Another one of my favorite moments is when he shows up to Thump's place after she's been taken and beaten. And we hear him pull. They assume it's Teardrop pulling up, and of course it is. And just before that door comes up and reveals him, these real threatening-looking dudes and these big dudes are standing around, and they're trying, to intimidate Ree and all that. And then they just hear Teardrop pull up, and that one guy's like, I gotta go get my gun. I'm not gonna be unarmed when that motherfucker gets in here. and that just kind of really says everything. Like, a lot of him is build-up. But when Hawks actually shows up, he really does give you all the vibes that all that build-up suggests. Which is really good. And can I also just say I kind of like the way that... This is an Oscar-nominated screenplay, of course, in a movie that was nominated for Best Picture. And I remember your flabbergasted reaction to this line. It's when after Teardrop leaves and we've just had this really big threatening moment. And I don't believe it's supposed to be funny. It's just the way the people talk. And how they're all druggies and everything. So it kind of shows also just how, natural this drug-induced environment is for these people. But it's when Teardrop goes back to his room and that woman's seeing her out. And she just says, here's a doobie for your walk. It's like, I remember your initial reaction to that line, and it was more confusion than anything. It's like, this is an Oscar-nominated script, right? Here's a doobie for your walk.
Yeah, it was very weird.
But I think it mainly shows just how drugs are just such a normal thing to these people. How it's like, normally people would say, like, here's a bottle of water for your walk or something. But no, it's that. And we do have some people, like I said, Dale Dickey is very kind of, she makes you very uncomfortable, which is her job, which is great. And there's the sheriff who is Garrett Dillahunt. Okay, this might be a rumor, I'm not sure. I really want to believe it, actually. But it might just be a rumor, but Garrett Dillahunt as the sheriff that's looking out for her, due to her connection to the show, and that's basically how she initially got her face seen, supposedly there was a rumor that the sheriff part was offered to Bill Engvall. I'm very curious how he would have looked in a movie nominated for Best Picture. I don't know, but that's just a rumor that you can't even really trust. But I like to think it's kind of true. And then there's also the Bond guy. The Bond guy is Tate Taylor, the director of The Help. Yeah, that Tate Taylor. That's very interesting. I think he was an actor, I think, for a long time before The Help came out, actually. So there's that. And then there is, okay. Well, another thing that's good also that I want to mention about the story is how, there's almost like the whole, the story is so kind of basic, and the way she just kind of has to go from person to person, and how it leaves room for all of these colorful characters to pop in and out of the story like this. It almost feels like a really old story. Like something that's almost like a classic story or something. Like it would be. I don't think the novel is that old, but it almost feels like it's almost like I'm not sure how to word this. Like when you have those really, really old stories and they do modern updates of them, this feels like it would be the modern update of like a really old story or something. Which I think is kind of really cool about it. And of course, we haven't really much talked about Lawrence yet. Obviously, this is kind of where she really, like, the movie is kind of here in popularity, but this is really where she kind of took off. Obviously, this was 2 years prior to the Hunger Games, but I'm going to assume her getting these parts had a lot to do with this movie. There was even Simon Pegg talking about Star Trek Beyond, where the character Jayla is based off Jennifer Lawrence's performance in this movie. Which is very interesting. And it's mainly, I think her line, while she really shows off the kind of stoic quality you need for this character, and that she can believably be a 17-year-old that puts herself in these really dangerous situations and just really, really goes for it, even when her life may or may not be at stake. She just keeps going. I think her line deliveries go a long way too. Just the little signs too, like when she's teaching them how to hunt, and then she's basically saying you have to be really, really quiet, and then the kid sneezes, and she says bless you, but her bless you is kind of lays right into the next sentence she's saying, like it's just all one thing. I don't know, there's just something about that delivery I really like. And then there's the moment when they want to search her house. And she's like, well, there's nothing in there. And when they say they really need to search the house, she says, all you'd be doing is wasting your time and pissing me off. Lines like that kind of really show kind of the strength of her character. And her, if it weren't for her delivery of them, they wouldn't work at all. So she brings it up. The moment when she shows off that she can't be bamboozled either. When the dude shows her the blown up lab and he's trying to pass it off as like the place where her dad probably died, and then like long after that scene has passed, she finally says, oh, by the way, I saw how tall the weeds were and that place probably blew like a year ago. And then he realizes that she's not the stupid 17-year-old that he might think she is. And how it's not only in the way she portrays it, of how it's not just the fact that she's a young girl that has to go through all this, but she's a young girl that grew up in this environment that has to do this, that makes her believably stronger. And it's just a really, really damn good performance, and it's pretty easy to see, how she ended up taking off after this. And there's even the moment with Dale Dickey when she's saying, I'm looking for my father and this and all that. And Dale Dickey's response is, well, ain't you got no man to take care of that for you? And so it's like, so she's in a world where it's like, women are expected to just shut the fuck up and men are expected to do all the other shit. And she's basically got to kind of come forth in this environment while she's at it. And it's very... And to see this character rise above all this is really quite triumphant, in a way, for the movie being so small about it. And that's kind of really where the whole heart of the movie lies, is basically how she has to go through all of that in order to get to the point that she does. and does so believably, because the movie does feel quite real with all the authenticity that went to it in the backgrounds and the other players and all that other stuff. The recruiter scene is really good too, which to my understanding is basically it was Lawrence reading the questions that were in the script, and the recruiter, who was like a real recruiter, just answering her the way he would if she was just some person that walked in. And it's a really good and really real scene that's right in there. It does have a bit of a case of redundancy, I think, in the last 40 minutes or so. But once it kind of gets there, it really does. Yeah, it's definitely, for a while, like I said, for a while there, I was not a fan of this movie. But the more I saw it, the more all this kind of started to sink in, and it started to really grow on me. So yes, it is very. I'm still am not exactly as on board with it as many people are, because there are people that are absolutely crazy for this movie, and I do get that. But yeah, after a lot of consideration, I do think it is very good overall. Which brings us to Martha Marcy May Marlene, another movie that people went absolutely crazy for. There are people who are passionately in love with this movie. And the first time I did not take to it at all. Where it was, it's basically one of those, as I hinted at in one of the review videos, I'm not sure if you've seen yet or not by this point. There's an ongoing trend in movies lately, where it's a fascination with cults. Mm-hmm. Which is what this movie is about. It's basically, she escapes the cult and goes to live with Hugh Dancy and her sister Sarah Paulson. And we get flashbacks as to what exactly happened to her at this cult and what kind of place it actually is. And it's this really, really bizarre place where it's like John Hawkes is like the head of them, and then there is like Brady Corbett is in there, Christopher Abbott is in there, and they just have this very weird, like the women are just kind of like, it's very like old. It's almost like they think they're in the 1800s or something. And then there's like, they have one phone line and they have to answer it with the name Marlene. And then there's this little ritual, this dinner ritual, where it's like all the dudes, or like, they make dinner and then all the dudes eat dinner while all the women just kind of sit out on the steps. And then when the dudes are done eating, they have to clear it all out, and then they do. Everything's this weird, like, sexist ritual or something. And they all just kind of creepily kind of fall into it. And this is another case where Hawks' performance is a big factor, because Patrick's another one of those unpredictable characters where it's like, when he starts off, he's nice enough. He's very friendly and inviting, like the leader of a cult typically would be. But then it gets to the point to where Martha's not quite sure how to take all this, so she's just kind of on the sidelines. And then Patrick gets the slightest bit a little more intimidating when he says something along the lines of, you know, if you're going to live here, you're going to have to participate. Just so you know. You got to be one of us if you're going to be one of us. And it's like, oh, that's okay. He's getting a little more sinister now. And then we have these really, really effective scenes that are very uncomfortable and very jarring, really. When it is, you see Martha on the ground, on her stomach, and Patrick is appearing to have sex with her. And you're kind of just in the scene. The way the scene plays out is it's just kind of happening, and you're like, well, that's happening. That must be one of their rituals or something. And Martha just seems like out of it, and you're like, oh, she must be like, you know, on drugs or something, or maybe they did something or something. But then you realize that she's waking up from sleep, and Patrick is raping her. And just the way that scene plays out, where it kind of seems like it's one thing, and then you realize, holy shit, it's that. It's very... And then the follow-up scene, where it's like, oh no, what just happened in there? That was a good thing. Like, what Patrick was doing to you, that's very good. That's definitely a good thing. And then the movie takes on this very creepy tone. obviously. I mean, it was kind of off-putting for a while there, but then when you realize what's really going on and all the shit that goes down, a real creepiness sets in. Some people like to argue this is borderline horror. I don't know that I would go that far, but it's definitely it reaches thriller territory, at least a little bit. And then, and they do, and the way, it's very effective the way they play with the back and forth. Sean Durkin is the name of the writer and director. And the way he handles, the way she's flashing back from the present day scenes with Sarah Paulson and Hugh Dancy. With the way obviously, her mind is so messed up by this point that sometimes she doesn't quite remember where she is, whether she's in one place or the other. Or what's appropriate in one place and what's not appropriate in the other. Like the skinny dipping, for instance. But the way some scenes start and end, the director kind of puts us in her mind because there are times where we're not quite sure where we are either. Because the scene will she'll be in the past and then there'll be like a transition and she'll be doing something. And with the way the scene changed, we're still kind of under the impression she's in the past, but then, like, Sarah Paulson will walk in and we realize this is a scene taking place in the present. And then it's like, so, with those kind of ambiguous transitions like that, when a scene starts and when a scene ends, much like her, we're never quite sure where we are either. And I think that's a really effective way to do that. Especially how kind of seamlessly and subtly it's pulled off. Because you can do that, but it would be way too obvious to throw you off. But it actually really works here. And then obviously the title comes from there's the whole name changing thing. Because like I said, her real name is Martha. They're Marlene when they answer the phone, and then Patrick is kind of changing their name to how he sees fit every time. Like when he says you come off more like a Marcy May. And then there's the scene later with Julie Garner, I think is the actress's name, where she's Sarah, and Patrick's walking up with a smile on his face, just like when he met Martha. And they're like, "Have you met Sarah?" And he's like, "Hi, hello, Sally." And her name is just Sally forever now. And that's just the way Patrick plays the game. And yeah, there are some memorable scenes here. We were just talking about how you can't look at John Hawkes without thinking about him singing Marcy's song.
No.
There's the scene with Christopher Rabbit in the woods when that animal's like sick and dying and Patrick's telling her to shoot it. And he says, well, if you can't shoot that, then shoot him. And it's this real whole intense thing. And there's a lot of intensity in the break-in scenes where after a while they just start breaking into people's houses just to lurk around. I don't know. But then obviously one of those leads to something horrible, yet short-lived. Now, as far as me having problems with it, this is all stuff from a couple of times seeing it. Or from a few times seeing it. The first couple of times, I know I have this thing about watching movies I hate in the event that there's something in there that I might see maybe years down the road that I don't see the first time when I first see it. But I mean, yeah. One of the most major things about this movie that is praised to high heavens is Elizabeth Olsen's performance, which is kind of her, basically her first big thing. She was like, I remember those like Mary-Kate and Ashley videos where every now and then she'd be Lizzie and she'd pop up and cause trouble and then she'd leave. But then she just showed up in this and kind of became like the upfront Olsen sister now. Yeah, I do get that she's good here, and she does, she can express her face well, and she can do a lot of things subtly, and she really brings in the panic of everything. I don't think it quite reaches the brilliance that she's been given credit for. I mean, people go off the walls when they talk about how brilliant they think this performance is. She's very good in it. She does hit the right notes. But I'm not so sure I feel like it goes above and beyond, at least for me. And honestly, going on that, the movie is very, very subdued, which I can very much appreciate. But I almost in some cases, feel like maybe it's a little too subtle. To the point that it just kind of... There's kind of a mundane quality to it after a while, long after the point has been established. We don't, you know, there are certainly a lot of other things that are, you know, there are movies I have seen out there that make Martha Marcy May Marlene look like a Michael Bay movie. Martha Michael Bay Marlene, if you want to call it that. But I mean, still, I feel like the point is, it feels like there's no progress in the movie once the point is established. And it just kind of feels like the same thing after a while, like the same beat, for like the second half. And that's where it still can... While I can't appreciate it much more than I did when it first came out, there's definitely some things here that I still kind of leave me at a distance. And I do feel like, they probably could have done more with the paranoia aspect as well. I mean, it's kind of always in there, and we do kind of gets, you know, once she makes the phone call back to the place, and she's kind of always expecting to be found, it kind of really sets in. But I kind of feel like there was room for it to be a bit more riveting, I guess, and suspenseful, to kind of go on that creepiness that it sets up in the first half. Yeah, for a while though, it just kind of feels like kind of the same beats are happening on a loop until we get to our ending, which is, yeah. If you want, I mean, I get the love for the ending too. It's very, yeah. Your mind can just run free with that shit. It's, I don't know. To this day, the ending, I'm still not, as you can probably tell, I'm still not quite sure how I feel about the ending. I mean, I think it's ballsy, sure, but I don't know. I'm still not quite sure if I'm on board with it completely or not. So yeah, I can understand it, but I mean, the praise that it got was just insane. And that's not... I don't know that I can ever actually feel that way about this movie. Like I said, mainly Olsen gets a lot of the praise, and I do think she's good in it. But I wouldn't say anything in this movie is particularly brilliant or newfound or anything. But I do like the way they handle a lot of the subject matter, and like I said, the way they transition well. But yeah, I'm definitely winner's bone on this side. So,
all right. So as another edition of Versus, continue to check out the other content here on the podcast network. Next week, it is obviously Halloween Horror Nights time, and on the 16th, we have the review video, which is going to have about 12 different movies on it.
I think so. Is that the one we just filmed?
Yes.
Yes, that's 12.
Yay, kayfabe is dead.
I know. I'm wearing the same shirt.
It doesn't matter. So that's going to be taken care of, and of course, since it is opening weekend, it makes only sense that your Versus cryptic comment is excellent! So yeah, that's going to be your video for next week.
You can say that in 2 tones, too.
Yeah, excellent. There we go. So that being said, continue to follow the Podcast Network on Twitter at Podcast Network, Zazzle merch at Podcast Network, and also we have a Facebook fan page at Podcast Network. So in the meantime, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. If you have any parting words?